In our latest episode of Hillingdon Speaks, I'm going to be talking to Danny Beales, the MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, covering a variety of issues that he's involved with on a day-to-day basis. If you want to find out a little bit more about local politics and what's involved, do give it a watch or listen. I'm here with Danny. Welcome to Hillingdon Speaks. You're the MP, well, gosh, people do know this, but you're the MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip. But outside of that, I'd love to just get to know you a little bit, what you get up to outside of talking and doing politics.
Sure. It feels like very little at the moment, to be honest. It's kind of an all-encompassing job, 12, 14-hour days, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. So the kind of outside life has become smaller and smaller. Yeah. But I guess in terms of, when you do have those moments or before politics, before being an MP, I kind of enjoy football. I've been a Fulham fan for a long time. My dad used to take me to Craven Cottage, season ticket holder for 7 years. Like getting down there on a Saturday now.
It's a great stadium as well.
It's a lovely stadium, but right by the river. It's a great day out for families, I think. And I would say it's a great club as well. London's oldest club. And I kind of try and run. My knees are not as they once were, so less running at the moment. I try and kind of keep fit a few times a week to keep healthy. Enjoy film, seeing friends and family, but again, kind of struggling more and more to make time to do that.
It's all hypothetical free time, isn't it, for you right now?
It is. But those sorts I kind of, obviously live here, actually not far from my office in Uxbridge, but I grew up in the South Ruislip side of the constituency. But I kind of live here, kind of from the area. And that's kind of me, really.
I'd love to hear a bit about how you got into politics. Just in a nutshell, how did it all happen?
I guess in a nutshell, yes, and no one in my family was particularly political. I mean, my family all have views, all different views, have voted for all different parties right across the spectrum. But we weren't necessarily a family that taught politics at the dinner table. It wasn't, religion and politics weren't really discussed much growing up. I suppose I got political more so from my life experience. And my mum and I both were born at Hillingdon Hospital. We both grew up here, as my family's been here for kind of 4 generations. My mum became a single parent when I was 3, and I guess kind of my mum has always tried to do her best, but often kind of struggled financially, and despite working 2 jobs, we were kind of homeless here in my teens. So I actually didn't finish school here. I started secondary school at Abbotsfield, but didn't complete the school because we were homeless, and I had to move outside of London. So we relocated to Northampton, and then in Northampton, actually, a second time we were homeless before finally getting a kind of more stable council home. And I think that experience really kind of made me political, and I kind of asked myself questions about the situation my mum and I were in. Again, as I said, like she was working 2 jobs, but we couldn't afford a house. And I kind of asked, well, why is that? That doesn't feel to me like a fair scenario for me. And then when you're in hostels and hotels and temporary accommodation, you see families around you as well. We weren't alone. There were many people in these situations now, actually even more so in 2026. And so that got me interested in politics, in current affairs. I kind of read more about the situation. And for me, I kind of was passionate about kind of trying to change some of that. And I thought politics was the best route to do that. I kind of joined a political party, the Labour Party for me, quite young, and just got active. I was in local government for 10 years in Camden. I was a councillor and a cabinet member there for 10 years. And then, decided to put my name forward to be selected as a candidate here where I grew up. I kind of moved back and stood in a by-election which I lost, and the general election which fortunately for me I won.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, and you don't look old enough to have gone through all of that as well.
Good moisturiser, maybe. I don't know.
And it's a job that I think a lot of people wouldn't envy, even though it's very a noble thing to do. And I'd just like to ask, what kind of things that you find really tough, because ultimately nobody else can really understand it until you're in it. But what kind of things that you find really tough right now in your role that people maybe not see behind the scenes? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real privilege to do the role, and I don't want to kind of negate that or lose that. It is a real privilege. Not many people get the opportunity, and particularly for somewhere that you grow up, you're from, you live, and you're passionate about, to represent that area is a real honour. But it is a tough job. I'm not going to lie about that either. And I think in reality, you're often seen as almost like an organisation or a part. People see you on the same terms as the council or a department or the government, and in reality, you're one person with a very small team behind you who do great work. Actually, my team are fantastic, but I don't have 1,000 people like the council or a whole institution behind me, and I represent 100,000 people, and they want and they expect to speak to me, to talk to me, to meet me, that I will come to every event, and the job is all encompassing 24/7, and I try as much as possible to get back to everyone, to see as much as I can of the borough and meet organisations, and at the same time I also have to be in Parliament usually 4 days a week until quite late. So it's kind of trying to squeeze all of that, and make sure you're on top of everything that people care about. So I think it's time is the challenge. There's just not enough of you to go around, and I think particularly, and it speaks to all public services and businesses even as well. I think the public's expectation about contact has gone up and up and up with new technology, social media. People expect you not only to get back to their email within 24, 48 hours, of which I get back 300 a day. They expect you to be available on the phone, to be, as you say, responding to comments on social media and like all sorts of social media. And I think that is a challenge for businesses, for organisations, and particularly for an MP who's kind of...
Well, I never thought of it like that. And it's a very human role as well. You'll get a lot of, scrutiny, and people just like social media as well, when you talk about the kind of trolling and stuff like that goes on. How do you handle that actually as a kind of person that, to develop a thick skin, I guess, and how has that changed in terms of...
So not all the contact is, always positive. And I think, I think particularly online social media is where most abuse actually happens. I think my experience is, my general view is most people are decent actually, and regardless of what people think, people can agree and disagree about all sorts of things. Most people are kind of fair, focused on better life for them and their family and their community, and aren't full of hate and abuse.
Coming from a good place.
I think it is a minority, but I think particularly social media, because it's so almost anonymous, like people feel that when they write things, it is not going to a real person. There's not a real person at the end of it. And you'll find like all sorts of people you often meet in real life, and they'll be nice as pie, or they'll be lovely. Online, it's a completely different
keyboard warrior.
It's a completely different persona. The things that people feel they can say. And I think also when you're a public figure of sorts, which you are, I guess you are when you're an MP, people also make a lot of assumptions about you, about who you are, about what you think. They'll read everything they read, even other social media comments. They'll believe a gospel truth because someone says something on social media. So it's difficult, and you can't put the record straight on every comment, on everything that happens. Just you waste all your time just doing that and not actually get anything done. So it's difficult. I think it's not a perfect scenario, but the only way I think I've tried to deal with it, and I think maybe you can, is you've got to kind of find your the things that personally help you recharge, help you de-stress. As I said, I try and go to gym a couple of times. I find exercise kind of helps me de-stress. whatever it is, seeing the family.
Still probably
football.
get people at the gym even asking you stuff, don't you?
You do, yeah. I mean, that is one of the challenges. Is like you're never really anonymous.
Yeah.
Like when you just want to pop to Tesco and grab like some cereal, and then you get chatting at like 10 p.m. in the aisle, or I've had it when I'm running to get the Elizabeth line to get to work. You get someone go, oh, by the way, could you, and you're like, I've got 2 minutes to get the train. So it is a challenge, but again, I think you have to just remember the positives and try and dwell on them more and not get dragged down by the negatives.
That's good advice.
And like on Fridays, I see people face to face in the constituency every week, and as I say, like people are genuinely lovely, really care. You meet all sorts of businesses, organisations, charities who are doing great stuff, and actually I just try and focus as much as possible on that side of the job.
That's a great part of the job, isn't it? Yeah, and you obviously even there it'll come across lots of challenges. But what are the kind of big challenges right now that, if you want to name a couple, I know at the expense of other ones, there's so many things for you got to deal with. But what kind of things are front of mind right now for you? Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on a casework basis, the people asking for help, I think the predominant thing mainly is around housing and people really struggling with, we get a few cases a day of people struggling to kind of keep their home. Their landlord is evicting them soon for a Section 21 eviction, which is due to end soon, but at the moment hasn't yet. And not having the right size home or facilities for them and their kids. So I think that's probably where we get the most one-to-one ask for help.
Yeah.
Then we get asked for support about all sorts of issues, from neighbour issues, planning issues, to special educational needs support, whole gamut of stuff. I guess more generally in terms of beyond kind of requests for support, what people are saying on the doorsteps, people are talking to me about the cost of living, the economy is still the ongoing challenge and concern. I think particularly with the war in Iran and fuel prices and inflation kind of ticking back up. I think people are just as worried about the essentials of life, the day-to-day living stuff. I think that's probably the predominant concern that people are understandably kind of reflecting on.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on the housing situation. I mean, what would you say, like in terms of young people that looking to get on the ladder? It's probably just maybe it's slightly out of your remit, but in terms of what kind of things could you encourage them with? Are there things going on within the borough that you think they can feel positive about?
Housing, massive challenge. Wherever you are in the housing system, it feels like a system that isn't working. Whether it's a younger person or couple who want to get on the housing ladder, being a first-time buyer, or someone who wants an affordable home, who's lived in the borough a long time and struggling to pay rent, or wants to move out from mum and dad's house and there's nowhere to go. Wherever you are, it feels like the system is not great, to put it lightly. I suppose in terms of first-time buyers particularly, I think we face a real problem with supply in Hillingdon. We've had very few starts of new homes. Everyone knows the half-finished development in Uxbridge, the St Andrews site, the kind of concrete structure, skeleton that's up for years, which is kind of symbolic probably of the housing system in the last 5 years, kind of ground to a halt. So I think for me, my focus a lot has been getting those sites moving, whether it's St Andrews or Bellway and Newsley, not far from where we are now. There's kind of probably like 1,000 homes that have planning permission that are in all states of getting ready but are stuck. And so I've been kind of speaking to the developers, trying to get the council to get on and get all their legal conditions signed off, Section 106 conditions, which a lot of them still haven't been done by the council. Trying to get the government to reform the planning system and some of the other barriers to the building safety regulator, which came in under the last government. Good intentions after Grenfell. Unfortunately, the way it was implemented was terrible, and people have been stuck for years sometimes trying to get the building safety regulator to sign off their homes.
To sell their place.
Exactly, after planning, getting an EWS one form, exactly. Like, if you're trying to buy or sell. So trying to get that building safety kind of program and process sorted so it gives us safety, but in an effective and efficient way. And I think more broadly, I've been doing a lot on leasehold reform.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people who are leaseholders or potential leaseholders often talk about the nightmare that leaseholders become. And the government is making a number of changes which I think are positive for first-time buyers. So capping ground rent at £250, service charge reform, ending new leaseholds. So new properties will be common hold going forward, and it'll be much easier to switch to common hold. I've been so as well as that, I've personally been particularly pushing for a new kind of reform to managing agents, who are the people that get contracted to manage the homes, which people complain all the time about. And actually, interestingly, you don't need any qualifications. There's no regulation of that really, or registration. So I've been working with a member of the House of Lords to try and improve that and introduce a regulator and professional qualifications for managing agents. So, which I think will help reassure people. In London, and particularly in Hillingdon now, new flats are often the case of first-time buyers, and they are leasehold, soon to be common hold. So I think making sure people aren't going to get £6,000 service charge fees, no transparency, and no service quality, and a managing agent that just runs away. I think.
And then not being able to sell it at the end is a double whammy.
Exactly. So work on that. And I think just lastly, I think the house buying process, we all know in England, is really difficult and long and time consuming.
Don't I know it?
Yeah, exactly. So the government are looking at the moment at reviewing the house buying system and looking at how it can be made much more efficient, much quicker. Which I think is positive as well. As someone who's gone through that process before, yet it is a bit of a minefield. Yeah,
for sure. No, I'm really glad I asked all that. I wasn't going to ask, but it's I didn't know how much you're involved with it, and it's good to see. It's encouraging to see. So thank you for all your work on it as well. And just in terms of overall Hillingdon as a place, I mean, in terms of over the time as an MP, what have you found as an experience of the whole borough and your just general impressions of it, really? I know you obviously grew up in the area as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a fantastic place, and there's so much to be positive about. And I think because of my job, and just generally I think how we are now, how Facebook groups are or whatever, we're always thinking about what needs to change and what needs to get better. And my job is always about that, is not just dwelling on I guess one of my concerns about my predecessors, often that was the case. It felt like just a kind of self-congratulatory roadshow about how amazing everything is. And actually, things are great in Hillingdon. There's lots of good stuff, but also things do need to change. So I think it's important, and my job is to try and make change happen. But yeah, I think it's a helpful question, because we can't lose sight of what is positive. It's a great place in terms of being kind of good for families. There's lots of greenery. We're on the doorstep of the Con Valley, and amazing lakes in the north, rivers, canals. It's beautiful. Like we were just talking before the podcast about the history, the lost history. Some great things the great kind of pubs, the Battle of Britain history. I've been to the RAF Norfolk base before, and they've got a little museum about the kind of Polish contribution. Well, obviously I grew up near the Polish War Memorial, so kind of knew it before. But there's so much amazing kind of history, beautiful buildings, places to explore. I think a lot of the schools I go to and meet, and I think the schools are generally really good here, really positive. So I think huge amount. I think Uxbridge town centre definitely needs some TLC. But that said, actually most of the shops are full. Compared to many high streets, it's still a kind of fairly buoyant place. The Chimes has got some new stuff in it. So I think there's lots we can look at, quite well connected transport wise. There's lots of really positive stuff that I love about Hillingdon, and I'm really pleased about, and we need to celebrate. But I guess my experience is the way people are feeling about it is people feel like it has declined. And that's the overwhelming kind of feedback I get, is that some of those good things are either under threat or aren't as good as they once were, or they said the town centre's dirtier, maybe a bit, people feel not as safe. People feel that it's, it always used to be a place that people get family homes. Like my grandparents kind of got their first home here. My great grandparents got their first home here. But now I think it's really tough for families to get homes here. So I think for me, that's been my focus, is celebrating the good, the great people doing good things, but also trying to make those things easier to do, trying to hopefully make change on the things that people feel are kind of undermining that positivity.
Yeah, and I think social media as well has this part to play where people talk about the good old days and that automatically almost say emphasizes that it's not as good as it was now. It isn't as good now as it was before. But yeah, just you touch on in terms of Uxbridge Town Centre, like I'm thinking like in terms of a business owner and other retail businesses. I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce, that kind of thing. What encouragement is there for them, like to kind of to see some of the city centres, town centres around here to open up and actually kind of thrive? Is there anything in particular that you're doing around that, and more thoughts on that really?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I think it's undoubtedly for many years been quite tough for particularly high street businesses. I think the environment, and I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think setting up a high street business comes with a lot of cost. The rent, business rates, energy costs, staffing costs, stock. There's a huge amount of upfront cost and ongoing costs for those bricks and mortar businesses. And I think at the same time, and it's across a number of years, our world, our lives have changed in so many ways to where they were 60 years ago in terms of how we live, how long we live, the challenges we all face in the modern world. And I think whether it's changing the health service to match that or changing the high street to match that, I think we do have to respond to those challenges rather than just kind of wish they will go away. I think in reality, most people I know don't go to the high street now to get their clothes or bits and bobs around the home as they once did. They shop on Amazon and other retailers available, but people just get it delivered straight to their door in 24 hours and they don't go to the high street for those things. And many, we used to have the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker all on the high street, and it was lovely, and people often talk about that in such lovely terms. I remember that really fondly, but in reality we just don't buy things from the butcher and baker. Most people don't, and unless we want a policy to force people to do that, which I don't think people actually do. We have to kind of respond and let encourage and support the high street to respond. And that, for me, that means looking at what things people do want to go and do physically. And people often moan about, another hairdresser. Well, so far you can't get your hair cut online, so people go and get their hair cut. People go for now, like I was just in Ruislip High Street, just outside the constituency, and there's a new barber open, a new coffee shop open, a new gym open, a new yoga place. I actually visited this refill shop, but you can go and they're great, amazing business. Great women run a business. They're fantastic, and they're selling not just good products and organic and kind of good for you food that you don't have packaging around, but they're selling, I guess, a vision, a value, a way of living. And so I think that's ultimately going to be where the high street is more successful. We've seen the bowling alley open in the high street in Uxbridge. So it's those sorts of activities, leisure. So I think from a government and a local council perspective, we really need to encourage that change, enable, and I think for people to want to go to the high street, we also, as the council have a real responsibility, but also the government, in making these places that people feel safe, that are really good experiences. And so think about, at the moment for me, I'm trying to get the council to clean up the car parks, which are awful. And for so many reasons we won't mention, but they're not nice and clean places. Trying to deal with the antisocial behaviour and crime, crack down on shoplifting and theft, which I think is both bad in it because it is bad, but also puts people off going. So I think definitely the government and the council can do stuff there. It can work with businesses like the Business Improvement Districts, Love Uxbridge, to bring more activities and events and culture, and kind of stuff to do in the evening as well. Often at the moment, the high street, I think, closes at 5 or 6. So you've got this dead zone where actually people feel very unsafe. There's not much happening. You're nowhere to really eat. And so I think trying to extend the high street a bit into the evening, so it's a place people want to go. So I think I certainly think, and from a national government perspective, the government has and is trying to get a bit fairer level playing field between online and offline businesses. Though it is difficult because of global events and the White House, but looking at fair tax on online businesses compared to bricks and mortar businesses. And also I think two of the particular challenges for kind of bricks and mortar businesses, energy costs. We've all seen energy bills go up. Businesses pay energy too, and a lot of energy. Trying to bring down energy costs will really benefit business as well as consumers. And
you're not in control of a lot of that anyway.
We're not, but getting UK-based energy, delinking our energy price from gas, because actually most of the energy we use isn't gas, but gas still sets the price most of the times. And so the government announced last week the process of trying to delink the cost of energy to gas prices, which I think would be positive. And just lastly, on people, I've been doing a lot around skills, jobs, apprenticeships locally. We're looking to set up a youth job hub at Uxbridge College with businesses to kind of get good people. There are lots of good people, lots of young people not in employment or training. And the government's just announced some financial incentives for business to employ young people, a couple of £1,000 if you employ a young person who's been out of work. So often, many of us, it was the high street, it was retail that was our first job, usually for so many people. And with the contracting of the high street and work in those places, I think that has restricted young people's often first step into work. And so I think there's a real push from the government to bring down youth unemployment and make sure everyone has an offer of work experience, a job, training, apprenticeship. So I think that hopefully that financial incentive will help particularly smaller businesses on the high street employ a young person and bring down the cost of doing so. And also hopefully that local work will kind of make an impact in Uxbridge itself.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, thank you for all that you shared there and your heart behind it all as well, and all the work you do. And I think as we round up, I'd probably just like to ask something that you like about Hillingdon in particular, maybe a favourite spot that you like to go to. We know now that you go to Tesco sometimes and get called it, but anything in particular that stand out for you, that's your kind of spot that you like to go to, or just a hidden gem that you might like to share?
Sure. I mean, I really love the kind of canal, actually. It's so lovely, actually. And, so I live in Uxbridge in the south. The canal obviously runs all the way up. And I think it's just a hidden gem. And I must say, actually, growing up here, because I grew up in the South Ruislip side, obviously we have a few little streams and rivers there. But I'd never really, growing up, visited the Colne, visited the canal over here.
It's beautiful.
And I think, and I've met the Colne before in some of the nature groups lately, I think we do really have to shout about it a bit more. And there's some great pubs along the canal as well, Water's Edge and many others, Malt Shovel. There's great pubs. It's lovely in the summer and lovely for a walk. So I'd kind of probably say there. Yeah,
I think it's the longest unbroken bit of canal in the whole country around our borough, and it's beautiful. And on a day like today, you can take some stunning pictures there. Don't feel like in London, don't you? So
it's a piece. You can kind of escape the
that's a good
crazy city.
Yeah, but thanks, Danny. I appreciate your time today as well. I know you're a very busy time for you, so thank you for appearing on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.